After being bullied for so long, Seongjun unleashed absolute chaos in the school. Many kids lost their lives, and in the end, he was finally caught. It seemed like Myeol's life was spared, but at that very moment, Yoo-jin cornered him. A revolver was in his hand, and he could have pulled the trigger any second. Yet he held back and changed his decision. Looking at Jung-tae and Seongjun's cases, one thing was clear. Guns were being handed out to people exactly like them. Moonbeck had received a list along with bullets, but he threw it away. However, he still remembered many of the addresses. At Lee's request, he wrote them down. One of those addresses belonged to a woman Lee knew. Her only son worked with a powerful politician, but a year ago, he mysteriously disappeared. She filed cases, protested alone, but nothing happened. One day, a gun was delivered to her through a courier. She used it to kill that politician. Right then, Lee called, and the woman told him she had taken justice into her own hands. Lee and Moonbeck rushed to her house, only to find her badly wounded. Soo had snatched the pistol from her, and he was there with his entire squad. They weren't planning on letting Lee leave alive, but Lee, with lightning speed, snatched the gun and beat them so brutally that none of them could even walk to a hospital. He and Moon took the injured woman to the hospital. During Soo's search, the list was found in his pocket. Lee immediately ordered an investigation on those addresses. Meanwhile, news surfaced about Moon as well. Until last year, he worked for Dongwall Industries, a company manufacturing military weapons for the government. Then suddenly it was discovered he had late-stage cancer, forcing him to quit. This revelation shook Lee to his core, but Moonbeck's past was far darker. The moment he was born, his mother abandoned him at an orphanage. The woman who took him in turned out to be a child trafficker. Years later, their gang received an order for an AB blood type I, with a buyer ready to pay 100 million won. Out of all the kidnapped kids, only Moon had that blood type. They took him away, and that night, his eye was ripped out and sold. The woman Moon thought was his mother betrayed him, selling him to an American organ trafficking ring. There, they were about to harvest all his organs. The operation had already begun, with an incision made on his stomach. But at the last second, the FBI raided the place and saved Moonbeck. Hearing this, Lee couldn't help but feel pity for him. After leaving the hospital, everyone went back to their homes. That's when Moonbeck's true colors came to light. He was the mastermind behind distributing guns across the city. A group of 15 to 20 men served him like a king. Right now, the stockpile of guns stuck with Kim was becoming a huge problem, because if that stock ended up in someone else's hands, their boss Jake wouldn't spare them. The man who assigned this job to Kim was the one at fault, and Moon shot him dead on the spot. One evening, Jake went to supply guns to an American gang, but they had set a trap to kill him. Turns out this was the same gang that had been busted years ago by the FBI for organ trafficking. Just then, Moonbeck showed up, holding a cheap pistol, and took his revenge. Meanwhile, hearing the gunfire, Jake's men stormed in and gunned down the buyers. Inside that warehouse where the shots had been fired, Moonbeck stood alone, having wiped out Jake's enemies with nothing but a single pistol. He was wounded, but Jake admired his courage. Instead of killing him, Jake saved Moon, brought him into his gang, and even got him a beautiful blue eye, which Moon covered with a black lens to hide the truth. After years of working with Jake, Moonbeck came up with a brilliant idea: flood Korea with guns. The country had a massive population, and almost everyone knew how to handle a firearm. To dominate the market, they first needed to target those who were oppressed by society. All they had to do was find these people and deliver the weapons straight to them. Once chaos erupted, the public would demand the government to legalize guns with licenses. Under this plan, 10 trucks loaded with weapons were brought into Korea. Meanwhile, tensions around Gyeongman were heating up. Before those guns could fall into his hands, Moon tipped off Seok-ho, revealing everything. Seok-ho's men double-checked, and sure enough, the weapons were there. Moon warned him, "You killed Kim, and that's why those guns are rotting there. But the bad news? Gyeongman is searching for them. If he tips off the police, you'll spend the rest of your life behind bars." Panicking, Seok-ho handed all the guns over to Lee and lied to save himself, claiming he bought Kim's hotel and found the weapons in the basement. He swore he had nothing to do with them. As for Kim's whereabouts, Seok-ho had no clue. The police believed Kim had been smuggling guns under the guise of courier deliveries. If they could catch him, they'd reach the real mastermind behind this operation. To distribute guns to the right people, they were using elderly couriers, paying them handsomely to make deliveries. Meanwhile, Lee had already handed over the list of addresses, and CCTV footage confirmed Moonbeck had visited every single one of them. Was he the one delivering the weapons? They moved to arrest him, but Moon vanished right before their eyes. When officers raided those addresses to seize the weapons, they found the guns were already gone. Someone posing as police had gotten there first. Half the addresses showed the same results. This became a major concern for the department, as whoever had taken those guns was now a serious threat to the public. In reality, it was Gyeongman's men who had seized the weapons. Everything was set. They were just waiting for the right moment. Gyeongman was once fiercely loyal to Seok-ho. He still remembered the day when the plan to kill Kim and take over his empire was being laid out. Back then, Gyeongman had only asked for one business in return, so he could feed his crew of 22 men. Seok-ho promised him a share once Kim was gone, but everyone knows what Seok-ho did after that. Now Gyeongman had just one ambition. Just like Seok-ho stole everything from Kim, he was ready to snatch it all from Seok-ho. Suddenly, Seok-ho showed up, but before he could notice anything, all the guns were hidden away. He had come there for one reason, to get Kim's client list. He had Kim's phone but couldn't unlock it. To open it, they needed all of Kim's fingers, and only Gyeongman could provide them. He agreed, but his face turned pale. Seok-ho already suspected Gyeongman was playing a dangerous game behind his back, so he devised a plan with Officer Lee. He believed Kim was still alive, and that Gyeongman was hiding him. If the police could find Kim, Seok-ho's worries would vanish. As for Gyeongman, he could be eliminated anytime. It was a solid strategy. Meanwhile, Gyeongman and Kim were plotting their next move, leading Gyeongman's crew to dig graves, literally. The police weren't the only ones watching. Seok-ho's men were tracking them closely as well. After hours of digging, Gyeongman's gang retrieved the fingers and returned to the hotel. This hotel, once Kim's, had not been given to Gyeongman to manage. Instead, Seok-ho had handed it over to Yonggu. Right before Gyeongman could deliver the fingers, his crew was washing up by the when Yonggu's men showed up and treated them like dogs, kicking them out. Furious, Gyeongman got dressed and texted the boss, saying he was on his way with the fingers. Moments later, he arrived at Seok-ho's place, and when Seok-ho saw Kim standing there, his heart nearly stopped. This was all part of the plan. Under the guise of delivering the fingers, Kim disguised himself in Gyeongman's clothes, and just like that, he pulled the trigger, firing 2-3 bullets straight into Seok-ho. But Seok-ho wasn't going down without a fight. He shot back. By the time Detective Seo arrived, both men had taken each other out. Meanwhile, an enraged Gyeongman and his crew unleashed hell on Yonggu's men. Riddling them with bullets and wiping them out. They stole every bit of Seok-ho's cash. Soon after, Seo discovered the shocking truth. The man who died wasn't Gyeongman, but Kim in disguise. Seo immediately relayed this to Lee, who was already staking out Gyeongman's hideout. Right then, he spotted Gyeongman's car pulling out. Without wasting a second, Lee grabbed his sniper rifle and alerted his team. Gyeongman, loyal to his crew till the end, handed them an entire bag stuffed with cash. They celebrated, but their joy was short-lived. Lee struck first, attacking before backup even arrived. A brutal gunfight erupted, bullets flying from both sides. Eventually, Gyeongman fled. Lee sprinted to the building's rooftop, took aim, and shot out their car's tire. The vehicle spun out of control, crashing into another. The driver was knocked out cold, trapping them there. Lee seized the moment, one clear shot, and he drilled a bullet into Gyeongman's shoulder. Finally, he was caught. Soon after, the police department made it public. The gang distributing guns to the masses had been taken down. The news reached Jake, who immediately called Moonbeck furious. Sure, they hadn't been caught, but some of their weapons had. If Korean intelligence dug deeper, things could spiral out of control. And if the CIA stepped in, not just Korea, but their entire global operation would collapse. Moonbeck, on the other hand, was frustrated. Despite flooding the streets with guns, he hadn't seen the chaos he expected. Still, their agenda of legalizing guns in Korea was gaining traction, trending on podcasts, and fueling heated debates everywhere. Korean intelligence had already stepped in, tipped off by the CIA. They confirmed the International Rifle Union was behind it, backed by American politicians and powerful organizations, making them nearly untouchable. According to CIA intel, nearly 30,000 guns had already been smuggled into Korea, distributed by Blue Brown. No one knew how. They investigated every Korean company, every courier service, but came up empty. The mystery deepened. Meanwhile, Lee uncovered another chilling fact. Those guns were equipped with advanced GPS capable of transmitting conversations through an assistive device. But what was this assistive device? Turns out every victim who received a gun had their phones hacked. Their own phones were being used to spy on them. Lee met with a retired military friend now working in Korean intelligence and shared everything about the GPS. As the case unraveled, one more dark secret came to light. Remember the man found hanging, with bullets scattered around? The report revealed he hadn't taken his own life. He was murdered. He was a child trafficker, snatching infants from baby boxes. Maybe one of those kids escaped, and now, years later, that same child had come back for revenge, leaving behind a storm of bullets, sending a message to the country that abandoned him. He would burn it to the ground. But that was just a theory. Then it hit Lee. If they could trace every GPS signal embedded in those guns and track the common source communicating with all the victims, they could find the enemy's base. Just then, the entire Korean intelligence system was hacked. There had to be someone on the inside, someone carrying one of Moonbeck's guns. The building was evacuated and a full search began. That's when they found it. A female employee was caught with a gun. Meanwhile, Moonbeck kept calling Lee, taunting him, telling him that his most trusted man was about to take the biggest step of his life. That man was Sergeant Joe, the very man who had raised Lee like his own son. Lee rushed out to find him. The truth was brutal. Joe's daughter had handed over all her savings, even Joe's, to a company to buy her own apartment. But the company was a scam, ripping off countless victims and vanishing into thin air. The government did nothing. Joe's daughter didn't tell her father or even her brother. In the end, she took her own life. Using his sources, Moon had tracked down the scammer and sent Joe both a gun and the man's identity. While Korean intelligence used the GPS signals to pinpoint Moonbeck's location, a team moved in to capture him, but he wasn't there. On the other side, the scammer was living it up, partying in a private hideout. When Joe stormed in, unleashing a hail of bullets, mowing them down one by one, one wounded man managed to escape, limping into a crowded street, but Joe didn't stop. He chased him down and cornered him at gunpoint. By then, local police had arrived, and so had Lee. All of this, every second of it, was being broadcast live across Korea by Moonbeck, proving to the world why a gun was essential to survive a madman like Joe. Lee pleaded with Joe not to pull the trigger, reminding him of the time he stopped Lee from shooting when he was a child. Slowly, Joe's rage began to fade, but Moonbeck, watching his plan crumble, snapped. He stepped out of his car, aimed his gun, and fired at Lee. Joe jumped in to protect him, taking the bullet and dying in his arms. Lee, devastated, couldn't stop it. Moonbeck, a ruthless killer who had slaughtered over 100 people, didn't finish Lee off, because to him, this thrilling game only existed because of Lee. Afterward, Moonbeck hijacked the airwaves, making a bold announcement across Korea. If you're suffering injustice, I will give you a gun. Serve your own justice. Don't waste your life chasing courts and trials. You'll die waiting, and justice will never come. The impact was immediate. Days later, a victimized woman stormed into a courtroom and shot her rapist dead right in front of the judge, because the judge had sentenced him to only 3 years, excusing it as a drunken mistake. Influencers started reviewing airguns online, racking up millions of views. Fear spread like wildfire. Sales of airguns skyrocketed. They looked just like the real thing. Streets filled with protesters, some demanding to legalize guns, others calling to ban them. An online survey showed 40% of the population now supported legalizing firearms. Korean intelligence was helpless, forcing the government to declare a state of emergency. Meanwhile, after 15 days, Officer Lee's condition improved. He was discharged from the hospital, but the chaos was far from over. His viral video had terrified the nation, triggering an estimated 15,000 new gun orders. In Korea, over 4 million couriers are delivered daily, plenty of cover for smuggling weapons. On the other side, Blue Brown was searching for a partner bold enough to handle their entire empire. Korea's most powerful figures showed up to claim the spot, but Blue Brown wasn't looking for power. They were looking for one thing: fearless courage. To test their courage, Blue Brown executed one contender on the spot. Then he tossed a gun into the circle of candidates and growled, "Whoever survives in the end will run our business in Korea." One daredevil snatched the gun and, in a shocking move, turned it on Blue Brown himself. Even when Blue Brown forced him to pull the trigger, he didn't hesitate. He fired, but the gun was empty. In the next moment, Blue Brown slaughtered every other contender, sparing only the one who dared to challenge him. That man became his partner. Meanwhile, the protests demanding gun legalization had exploded to a crowd of over 10,000. The chaos was spiraling out of control. Out of nowhere, an unmanned truck rolled into the crowd. The back doors swung open, revealing crates stacked to the brim with firearms. In the center, a speaker crackled to life. Blue Brown's voice thundered through it. "Anyone who wants a gun, take one." And just like that, the crowd surged forward, grabbing every weapon in sight. 2 cops were powerless against 10,000 armed citizens. Special forces were called in, but by the time they arrived, thousands were already armed. Lee made it to the scene, but Blue Brown's men did everything to stop him. A brutal shootout erupted, bullets tearing through the air until Lee wiped them all out. By then, Blue-Brown had slipped into the crowd of armed civilians. His men unleashed smoke grenades, covering the area in thick fog. Despite the chaos, Lee pushed through the smoke, hunting him down. Finally, they faced each other, pistols drawn just a few feet apart. One shot could set off a massacre. People would panic, firing wildly at each other. Lee hesitated, unable to shoot. In that split second, Blue-Brown vanished into the smoke. Then a gunshot cracked through the air, hitting Moon straight in the chest. The sound of the bullet triggered pure chaos. Panic spread and the crowd turned on itself, shooting anyone in sight out of sheer terror. But the burning question remained: who fired that shot? The series never shows it, but my guess? It was Jake. He had already warned Moon to finish the job cleanly. Moon knew his cancer would kill him soon anyway, and before dying, he wanted to turn Korea into a place where everyone was equal. In his mind, equality came only when everyone had a gun, and until his last breath, he tried to make that vision a reality. Amid the frenzy, a small child was trapped, crying in fear. In that moment, Officer Lee made a choice. He dropped his weapon, shielding the child in his arms, protecting him until the gunfire died down. That single act made him a symbol of peace. Inspired by his courage, people began abandoning their weapons, returning them to the government. It felt like normalcy was finally returning. But then the reporter who had made every Moonbeck story go viral was planning to air the footage of the massacre, pitching it to his boss. As he spoke, the janitor cleaning the room quietly raised a gun to his head. She knew if that video went public, everyone would know who killed who. Families of the victims would rise, seeking vengeance, and the cycle of bloodshed would begin all over again. She pulled the trigger. No video, no revenge, no bamboo, no flute. And that, my friends, was the story of the Trigger series. Hope you enjoyed this wild ride.